Okay, Keith Taylor, I'm back again. We're going to go part two with Robert Lack. He's a business attorney here in Charlotte. Part one was great, got a lot of good information as of today, Friday, March 27th. And he is taking questions in regards to some of the business owner clients I have and what they're going to do now in this environment, in this new environment that's ever changing. What are the options? What are the scenarios? And at least as of today, here are the what we know. So Robert, thanks for coming back.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right, let's get right into it with these questions. And these are all from my business owner clients to make sure that they get some of their answers, at least the most that we can give today. So what advice, and I'm looking away from the screen so I can read their questions. What advice do you have on how to approach a bank on a building mortgage to defer or reduce the payments during this time? Or is that even an option?
No, I think it's definitely an option. I mean, again, it's all dependent on your relationship with the bank and what their concerns are. But I mean, frankly, I'd be a little bit surprised if most banks are not willing to at least entertain some type of short-term deferral. I've heard that sometimes banks will say, okay, we're going to go interest-only payments for 6 months, and then we're going to pick it back up. Or, maybe you'll get a 2 or 3 month forbearance, right? And then it picks back up. It's all about just whatever you and your lender can negotiate. And by and large, most banks don't have a huge interest in watching a lot of their clients and projects, sort of hit all at once. So if there's any way that they can make it work and still feel secured, my experience is they're going to give it a shot.
Right, and that's why they're trying to flow or find so much more money back in the economy to make sure both sides are happy, right?
That's right.
Yeah, got it. So a small business owner asked, a smaller business owner asked, she just can't pay for a lot of the furloughs, so she's having the employees sign up for unemployment benefits. But with all the expenses going through, the debt keeps building, and there's many clients and many business owners who have already shut their doors. They just foresee what's happening and they don't have the cash flow. So are there any options for them to just stay afloat? I mean, I know we've talked about the SBA loans, but are you seeing, like I'm seeing, some businesses are having to shut down, or is there another option out there that they're not familiar with?
I mean, it's not necessarily there's another option. I mean, if you're going to stay around, then, you either have to work out deferred cash payments with the people you owe money to, or, get cash. And right now, those SBA programs are probably going to be your best bet to get short-term cash. Now, if you're fortunate in that you're in the type of business where you might not have a whole lot of expenses, and the people that you do have to spend money with are able to work with you, then you might be able to stay afloat for a few months without going out and having to borrow anything. But for most people that are trying to, most business owners that are trying, they see this as maybe a short term, 2 to 3 month, thing, maybe a little bit more.
Yeah.
They're trying to sort of stay as ready as possible to just get back going, once everything resumes. And, by and large, the way you do that is try to act as if not much is happening, which is very difficult. But, the SBA is trying to make it as beneficial as they can, or as easy as they can, to keep that going.
Yeah, so really the loans just help them stay afloat with the objective that 2, 3, 4 months, things will be more back to normal. And
yeah, I mean, like
right now,
so like right now on this PPP program, for example, right? I mean, they're going to cover 2.5 months of your average monthly payroll expenses, which there's all these defined terms, but there's nothing that stops Congress. If we get 2 months in and it looks like it's going to keep going, nothing stops Congress from coming back and extending the program for another month or 2 months, right? And it's one of those where if you've already applied, it might be a lot easier to extend than having to reapply in a couple months if Congress determines that's necessary. And it's Congress. Who knows what they're going to do?
Yeah, no kidding, right? So the next couple questions, they use a term, I just want to make sure everybody understands. They use the term SME. Can you explain that?
Yeah, basically it's an acronym for small to mid-size employer. Different parts of different laws treat it differently, but in this context, it seems to be any business that's got less than 500 employees.
Okay, perfect. So their question was on something I think you just mentioned, which is the payroll taxes. Have you heard anything as far as if they're going to be deferrable, or what would the repayment plan be like? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, so this is sort of like a completely different program than the SBA loan that we've already talked about, the EIDL and the PPP. It
Right.
appears that there's two different payroll tax programs that are out there. One is just a straight up deferral, where if your business has had to shut down or substantially reduce its hours, then any payroll, the employer side of payroll taxes, the 6.2% for Social Security, and then the 1.35 for Medicare or whatever it is, those items might be able to be deferred, where rather than paying them now, you can pay half of that amount at the end of 2021 and the other half at the end of 2022. So they're basically giving a fairly substantial deferral. A different program, which I think goes by the name of some type of employee retention program, allows for a payroll tax credit. And so the way to think about tax credits, they are a dollar for dollar reduction on what tax you owe. So you basically ignore the credit, compute tax owed, including payroll tax, and then if you have a credit available, you just reduce the amount that you send to the government by the amount of that credit. There's a payroll tax credit program where, and again, there's a couple different requirements. If you either close or if you don't close, but you see a substantial decrease in revenue from a calendar quarter in 2020 based off of what you did in 2019, that same calendar quarter, then you might be able to qualify for payroll tax credits for what you can continue to pay employees as salary. So if you furloughed all the employees and don't pay them anything, this isn't going to be something that you're eligible for. But if you use your own money, I think one of the things that's going to happen is these SBA loans are not going to be counted for this credit program. But if you use your own savings or money inside the business to continue paying salaries, then a percentage of what you pay can actually turn into a credit against payroll taxes going forward. And so you basically keep track of that amount, and then going forward, when everything gets better and your business is rocking and rolling, you're basically saving payroll taxes until that credit runs out.
So essentially, you have to have the cash flow to still pay it today, but you'll get the credit back later.
Correct. You'll get the money back later because the credit will offset what you'll pay in payroll taxes, all the way out until the credit is used up.
Okay, got it. So in regards to that paycheck protection plan that you mentioned,
Yep.
The max, this client's question is, his understanding is that max loans will be based on the average monthly payroll for the previous year times 2.5. Any ideas on that one?
That's true. It's a monthly payroll thing, though. So what you'll do is you'll look at your average monthly payroll amounts,
Right.
multiply it by 2.5, and then that's going to be, the amount of the loan. But the thing to understand about it is the way I think they compute these payroll amounts, I'm not sure that it's just the salaries. I think it also includes, and I'm not sure about this, but I think it also includes amounts that you pay for benefits. So if you pay for group health insurance or something like that, then the portion of that for that 2.5 month period, or for the monthly period, is attributable to the amount of the loan that you'd be eligible for.
Interesting. Okay, and can that loan, the PPP, do you know if that can be used for mission critical items like fixed cost, or how is that taken into consideration?
So the things that the issue as far as how you can use it is, how do you use it in a way where you will then get tax-free loan forgiveness, right? Because that's the big benefit. Like if you borrow the money at a low rate, but then you use it for things that aren't eligible, then you're just going to pay it back.
Right.
Right. And I think it's like a 10-year term, 4% interest. So not terrible, but the real benefit is if you borrow and you use it for the things that they want you to use it for, then you get tax-free loan forgiveness. And those main things are payroll, salaries, keeping employees paid. There are certain utilities. I don't think they've come out yet with exactly what those are, but certain utilities. and then rent, and then the interest component of owner occupied real estate payments. The interest component is subject to tax-free loan forgiveness, but not the principal component.
Got it. And these questions are coming from all different places. So some of them may be duplicate, but it's a lot, right? I can
Yeah,
understand small business owners, myself and you included, like there's just a lot to get your hands on right now. So for
there
everybody
really
out
is.
there, we may be duplicating some information, but I think depending on when you're listening, it's not going to be bad to hear it a couple times.
Yep.
All right, this one is a little detailed, so follow me on this, okay? Um, Information on paid sick leave for employees who actually get the COVID-19 virus or who need to take time off for those family members that do get that. It looks like it alludes to a possible exception if you have less than 50 employees, especially this company doesn't provide sick leave. So if people were to be out to be sick, what are the rules around all of that? Any idea?
So the only exception that I remember seeing in this is when the statute, and this is part of I think of the Families First, but when it lays out these new categories of sick leave, there's like 6 different categories. And one of them is if you're sick, another one is if a family member's sick and you have to take care of them. One of them is school closings. One
Right.
of them is not having childcare, like these 6 different categories. I think the exception for employers that have less than 50 employees, I think the exception is that in the event that an employee has to miss time because of school closings or not having childcare, that's when they may not be subjected to the FMLA, these new rules around, the payments under the sick leave. I think that's the only exception that I remember reading.
Okay. Got it. Yeah, it adds up definitely. What if some of these business owners are forced to work from home? Maybe they can continue to do business, but they can't do it the traditional way that they were doing or seeing clients face to face. Can they claim any additional expenses during this time period?
So, I mean, you might see behind me that I'm not a normal seamstress by trade. I'm in my wife's sewing room, and I've basically taken over this room as my office for this period of time.
Right.
And this is where you go back just to general tax rules. If you have a home office that you use exclusively for business and you can substantiate that, then there's an opportunity to maybe take some additional deductions there, home office deductions or things like that you wouldn't otherwise take. And if anyone from the IRS is listening, I have kicked my wife out of her sewing room and she is not sewing right now.
Well, that must be substantial right there. So that'll work.
It has not been fun.
um, so what if businesses are forced to close down, if businesses are forced to lay off their employees, um, what's the responsibility of the business owner to those employees during that time?
So, this is one of those things where there's some discussion or, sort of theoretical arguments online around how much does the FMLA Act apply here? Like, if you have to shut down your business because it's not going to survive, are you terminating all your employees because of them being sick, or is there a legitimate business reason? And, where a lot of these discussions seem to end up is going back to the old phrase, that pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered. If you're trying to trim out your workforce to like below 50 to avoid some of these rules, it's probably not going to fly. But like if you're legitimately having to shut down your business and get rid of everybody, then there's a very good argument that none of those laws are going to apply. And what you're going to be left with after that is employees who are on unemployment. And to the extent, the business owner is signed any personal guarantee like that, then they're going to have to, sort of go through those discussions and try to get through that storm.
Yeah, definitely. Another important reason why cash reserves are so important to have at any time, quite honestly, now it just amplifies that.
Yep.
Um, so what about the people that have to pay the bill, not the bills, the suppliers, the people that they pay on a monthly basis right now? Um, I guess it's maybe a case by case basis, but do you think some of them are going to waive late fees, or how would it affect their credits? Like, um, or is that still all in flux as we speak, depending on who you're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on who you're talking about. If you've got a supplier that's a strong company, great relationship, and they can weather the storm, they're probably going to be more willing to work with you. If you're dealing with a supplier that is, needs, your payment to not shut doors, they might not be as willing. So, whenever you're dealing with, two private companies, figuring out how to make it work, you've got your contract, and to the extent those parties can agree on something different, then they can always do that. And if not, then that's where we're going to see potentially some arguments or discussions around the applicability of force majeure clauses or other clauses in the contract where each party is going to say that they weren't obligated to perform, they're not at fault. Yeah, I mean, litigators might get some new case law out of this experience.
Yeah, this is going to be something that we're all impacted by today and
Yep.
working through it and figuring it out. But a lot of this may not be really fully understood for 3, 6, 12 months.
Or longer if the court system has its way.
Well, yeah, if that's the case, we'll just plan on it being longer by that point.
Yep.
Um, let's see. I'm looking over these questions. What about if the employee? What if they don't feel comfortable going to work? What right or what options does the employer have in that scenario? If they're like, not that they're affected by the virus, but if they just don't feel like they want to go to work, and the employer still need to get going, like what's the responsibility there?
Yeah, I mean, so fortunately, I haven't really had to deal with that. I mean, a lot of the questions that we've been getting and that I've had to deal with, most employers, business owners are being very responsive and wanting their, employees to feel safe and comfortable. Now, if you did have a situation where an employer was requiring that an employee come in and there's not some type of action or government intervention that the employee could rely on, then it might be a situation where there's a termination. But I really don't know the answer to that. Because like I said, I mean, from my experience, most employers have really been trying to bend over backwards and help people work from home and, figure out safe ways of working right now. So everyone can try to, you know, get through this together.
Yeah, exactly. We're all trying to do the same. I mean, emotionally, we're looking out for ourselves and then our businesses, but at the same time, we want to put our arms around everybody else to make sure everybody's in a good position.
Yep.
Last question. Um, this client asked, what happens if they were to put their employees on unemployment, but then take one of those forgivable payroll loans that you just talked about, SBA loans or whatever it was? Is that a pretty seamless transition if that's the direction they have to
Um,
go?
yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where like I don't know that no one really knows the forgivable loan, the PPP, loan program. No one really knows exactly how that's going to work yet because again, like it's part of the law that might be signed today. And it's going to be another week or two before that gets up and going. But my understanding of the way the loan forgiveness is calculated is they look at the day you take the loan and the amount of money they pay you. And then they look at how you use that money over the next 8 weeks after you get the money. And if you can substantiate that how much of that money you used for those eligible payments during that 8 week period, then that's the amount that is forgiven, tax-free. There's no COD income or cancellation of indebtedness income for that. And then any portion that is not used during that period for that purpose, for those purposes, is just a loan that gets repaid back.
Hmm.
And again, I think that's on a 10-year schedule, 4% interest, I think is the default.
Got it. Okay. Any other thoughts as we wrap up here? I mean, there's a lot to take in and digest and figure out. And like we've said, it's a work in
Yeah.
progress. But any other or thoughts or experiences that you've had or that you want to share to finish up?
The only thing that I'll say is and I've talked with both of the other attorneys that I work with in my office who have been dealing with these same issues. And by and large, most of the time, we have found that the best course of action is for someone to go in right now and try to qualify for that EIDL loan. Okay. Because if you qualify, you obviously get the cash and you can continue to operate and pay payroll. If you do that, then when this PPP program becomes available, you can qualify for that and actually roll the EIDL loan into the new PPP loan. And so they actually will consolidate it into that PPP loan, and then you basically just have that one loan going forward. So, you know, trying to qualify for that EIDL now and getting that process started, it doesn't appear that it has a downside, because historically, the way the SBA has worked, like these are different types of loans. They're under two different sections, like Section 7A and 7B. And it's historically been a pick one, right? But what they're saying, I think, is that if you get that EIDL loan on account or because of the coronavirus that's going around, then we will still let you qualify for the PPP loan and roll them all into one, which will be the PPP going forward. So that tends to be what most of our clients are in the process of doing right now.
Wow, that's great. Good info. So everybody can be proactive and actually make some decisions. It's a tough time, but we can't sit still. We've got to do something about it. Knowledge is first. Knowledge is power. We've got to act on that. And even by looking at trying to get these loans, taking care of our employees as much as we can, taking care of our families, and just taking it one day at a time. So, Robert, thanks again for your time today. Really appreciate it. Again, if other people have questions, they can let me know. We can get you in touch with Robert if you need to, and we'll go from there. So, Robert, again, thanks again for your time, and we'll be talking soon. Stay well.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Have a good weekend.
You're welcome.